Start. Mr. Deputy Chairman, I have moved an amendment, and while doing so, I have noted that the bill has been passed by the other house. I have got to make out a very good case for referring the bill to a select committee, as has been mentioned by the Honourable Minister and Honourable Member Shri Desai. The Forward Markets Regulation Act 1952 has been in operation for a number of years, and controls have been imposed on a number of commodities through a number of recognized associations. The powers that are now proposed to be vested in the Commission are very drastic, and it is for the House to decide whether such wide powers are at all necessary. The main ground on which these powers are sought to be taken, for which the Act is to be amended, is to curb speculation. No one will object to this laudable object that mere speculation which forces prices up should be checked, but the question is whether that object can be served without the other factors which can control the price line. As you know, prices cannot be forced up merely by speculation. If the supply is more than the demand, or if the supply is sufficient, whatever may be the speculation, it may be possible within a few days to reduce the prices, but prices cannot go up beyond a reasonable doubt limit. The powers that are now proposed to be given are very drastic. In the Forward Contracts (Regulation Act), ready delivery contract is defined as a contract which provides for delivery of goods within 11 days. I do not know the sanctity of 11 days, but if somebody delivers the goods even within 12 days, only a day late, it becomes bad. Even by the mutual consent of the parties also, the 11 days cannot be extended even by a single hour, and the contract would become illegal. It cannot be performed. Similarly, a non-transferable specific delivery contract is a contract where it cannot be transferred, but a transferable specific delivery contract is a contract which is not a non-transferable specific contract, and it can be transferred from person to person. In the case of transferable specific delivery contract also, the Commission wants to take power to limit the number of transfers. That is to say, a transferable contract also cannot be transferred if the Commission so directs. Similarly, a number of other powers have been taken by the Commission. If a bylaw is amended, and if contracts have been entered into prior to the amendment of the bylaw, and if the contracts are still outstanding and have not been fulfilled or performed, the new bylaw that will be framed by the association will be applicable to these contracts also. You cannot imagine a more drastic step where parties have already entered into certain contracts. Certain new additional conditions are imposed after they have entered into them, and before there is time for those contracts to be completed or performed. Similarly, the Commission has also been given the power that they can close if somebody has violated some of the provisions the contracts that the party has entered into. The commodities over which they exercise control are mostly commodities that are intended for export. For instance, jute and jute goods are manufactured mainly for export. The mills manufacture the goods and they sell them to the dealers, and the dealers generally sell them to the shippers and others. If a dealer has done something which is hit by any of the bylaws, the contract that he has entered into with the mills or some other dealer will be closed. What happens then to the shipper who has entered into a contract for supply to foreign markets? He cannot get the goods, and therefore he has to get them from somewhere else at a very high price, and the result will be that our export trade will be affected very much. In this connection, I would mention that I have got here copies of telegrams sent by the Chambers of Commerce in the United States of America, the United Kingdom and Australia, etc. The countries which generally purchase these goods, they are very much apprehensive that the whole trade will be affected. Recently, an order was passed by the Forward Markets Commission directing that a certain amount, a very high amount, should be deposited in cash in respect of contracts called long positions by the purchasers. The amount is so heavy that very few persons can deposit it unless they are very big people. Also, they fix up the price of jute at a certain amount. The result is that the price of jute in Bangladesh, where it is produced much more than in India, is about rupees 10 more than the price in India. And as a result, the extraordinary phenomena has happened this year that about 50,000 bales have been smuggled into Bangladesh from India. The issue really is whether higher education can be based merely on translations. Translations are important, and in many countries where the languages do not provide adequate textbooks, the conveying of knowledge, the conveying of thought is done through the personal medium, and the quality of the teachers is the thing that really matters in the development of thought and in the development of books. Therefore, while I strongly support the idea that there should be a concerted policy for translations and for the production of the books on every subject, I do not know whether it would be possible for me to vote for a committee at this stage for this purpose, when various organizations are already functioning, including the National Book Trust and the various academies which exist and which are backed not only by the state governments but to a certain extent by the central government also. There is a further point which I would like to emphasize, and it is this: there is this idea that in scientific, humanistic and other subjects, translation is merely the result of the backwardness of a knowledge language. The Honorable Minister for Scientific Research and Cultural Affairs has just now pointed out the number of translations that have taken place into the English language. From every language, books are translated into English, French, German, Russian, and so on. It is not a hallmark of our advancing desire to popularize knowledge. It is not given to a single language to have the monopoly of wisdom, the monopoly of knowledge, the monopoly of research. This is being done in every language, in every important language, and what is necessary for us is to accumulate that knowledge and to bring the quantum of that knowledge from various languages into our own languages, not merely for the purpose of school textbooks, but in order that the ordinary person, in order that the public at large may have a source from which to draw upon of their own knowledge. The idea that books are meant only for schools and only for teachers to teach and students to cram, I think is a very primitive one. What is important is that with national education developing in this country, books should be looked upon as the main source for the raising of standards and the intellectual level of the common people. You may have popular series like that, Home University Library, or similar books or standard volumes written especially and at higher prices. What is required is that works on the latest topics, science, social sciences, all these must be available for the common man and not merely for the students in the colleges. Students in colleges have set courses, they study set things. If they have not got the books, the teachers are there to explain to them what the books contain. I do not want to give very much importance to this idea that teachers should teach through textbooks. If teachers are well educated, if teachers know their subjects, they would teach through classics and not through textbooks. Textbooks are made easy in order to get through the examinations. What is important is that the teacher should know the subject well and he should be in a position to explain the intricacies to students who learn. The issue that we have to face clearly is this: when we have a developing system of education, when year by year the number of students in our schools and colleges increases by millions, it is not possible to keep the standards we had when our college going numbers were very small. At the same time, it is necessary that the standard not merely in colleges but the standard of knowledge, of information, of critical values must continue to rise if democracy has to function. And therefore it is not merely a question of producing textbooks, it is a question of producing good books, and good books in ample numbers to be made available at cheap prices to people who are educated. Actually, we come back to this question, that is the problem of continuing to educate the educated. It is not merely a question of educating the people in colleges, because science is daily progressing. Research work in social sciences is daily improving, in economics, in history, in all these subjects, there are daily improvements in knowledge. The fact that you took a degree or came through a university with distinction some time ago does not make you an educated man. It is necessary that you should keep in touch with those things so that the standard of knowledge continues to permeate at all levels, even the educated people. For this purpose, what is required is that the latest knowledge should be made available in books, not merely in textbooks, but in the best kind of books, and not merely by translation. Translation can only enrich a language up to a point. Translations are useful as producing a quantum of work for purposes of knowledge. Full stop. Over.